All right, everybody, and good Tuesday afternoon to you. And as we go into the evening now, and we're going to do a quick look at the tropics here. We have an area of disturbed weather that has emerged over the Gulf of Mexico this afternoon and does have a chance to become a tropical system. So let's get right to it. And we're looking at the visible satellite imagery from GOES-16 satellite. And what we can decipher from this is we have a stationary frontal boundary kind of draped across the Western Atlantic into Georgia, the Florida Panhandle, and down into the Gulf Coast. And that is helping to allow for a lot of thunderstorm activity here across the southeast, but that's not the only player here. We have a mid-level circulation, mid to upper level circulation that has moved down from northwest Alabama, northeast Mississippi, and even parts of Tennessee over the weekend. It was way up here and kind of tracked in this general direction over the last 48 hours or so, and is now over the Gulf of Mexico and helping to also spark the thunderstorm activity that you are currently seeing over the Florida Peninsula into parts of the Panhandle going into southern Alabama and southern Georgia this afternoon and evening. With tropical systems, it's also important to keep in mind that you do need a surface circulation before it can be named a tropical depression or tropical storm. And if we look at the satellite imagery very closely, you can kind of see a little bit of a circulation right about in here, and that's going to be your lower level circulation that's helping to also aid in the thunderstorm activity this afternoon. With tropical systems, it's important to note that in order for it to kind of strengthen and help itself intensify, you need your lower level circulation to match up with your mid and upper level circulation. You notice I circled them in two different locations. That's because that's exactly where they currently are, is displaced from each other. As long as these two areas of circulations are displaced from each other, that will limit development of this potential tropical system. These two areas of circulation, the lower level and your mid level, need to line up vertically in order for this system to be able to strengthen. Another key component is notice all this cloud cover and thunderstorm activity that's kind of hanging off the edge of the southwest coast of Florida. That's also due in part to an upper level disturbance, and it's potential that this area in the upper levels will kind of merge with the other upper level circulation that's currently over the Gulf of Mexico sometime tonight going into tomorrow. And all these processes will help bring this lower level circulation closer to the mid-level, and therefore will help this system begin to develop sometime tomorrow. If you look at the analysis page here, and we can kind of see the upper level circulation being depicted here very nicely over the Gulf of Mexico. And if we look at the lower level circulation, again, we were circling it on the satellite imagery, located just off the Big Bend coast of Florida. But notice how it's also very elongated along the eastern Gulf of Mexico. So as long as that remains elongated, and as long as it remains disconnected from the mid to upper level circulation, it's really going to inhibit development, and it's going to be slow to occur. Now, some models have been disagreeing on exactly how fast this happens. So what we're going to do is we're going to look at some models, and I'm going to use Tropical Tidbits as the source for the model data. My good friend Levi Cowan is at Florida State, very good guy, and he has his own website that produces model data, surface analysis, recon data, and of course he has his own videos as well that he puts out when tropical systems are occurring. Very informative. I learn a lot from him as I listen to his videos. So big shout out to him. Thank you for making his site so public. And if you want to look at some good data and also hear some good expert analysis, be sure to check out his website, tropicaltidbits.com. In the meantime, we're going to look at the European model that came out earlier today. And you can see initialized fairly well, showing the lower level circulation beginning to emerge over the northeast Gulf of Mexico. Let's fast forward a little bit, and we'll go to Thursday morning. And as I was saying earlier, that lower level circulation that we saw in the satellite imagery gets pulled to the southwest, closer to where the mid-level circulation is currently located. The European model has been a little bit more aggressive in terms of how fast it stacks this system vertically, and therefore strengthens it just a tad bit quicker than some other models. In that case, as we fast forward through this, notice how it brings it northward a lot quicker. into parts of the Louisiana coastline. If we switch to a different model, in this case the American model, and if we go around the same time, sometime on Saturday, notice the European model was already inland and further north. The GFS is a lot slower, still offshore by this time Saturday morning, and a strengthening system as well just off the coastline. So what exactly is causing this discrepancy in the models? So if we look at the overall pattern here, I'm going to back up a little bit closer to Thursday. Notice this strong area of high pressure that is in the upper levels that is currently located over the Four Corners region. So we have a strong upper level high over the western U.S. We have the Bermuda high pressure nosing itself into the western Atlantic, and we have what we call a trough of low pressure in the upper levels across the northeast U.S. with the area of low pressure located about here. When you typically have troughs moving into the eastern U.S., what they do is they induce a weakness in your high pressure somewhere around in here. And with tropical systems, the stronger they are, the easier it is for them to feel this weakness in the high pressure and move towards it. Tropical systems tend to move towards the area of least resistance, in this case, a trough of low pressure. But in this case, as we were talking about, the longer it takes for that mid-level and lower level circulation to come together, the more likely it is for the system to remain a little bit weaker. The weaker it is, the more likely it is to feel the pull of this high pressure, which in this case would be a flow something like this. And therefore, this system would tend to form a little bit further south and west as we go into Thursday and Friday, thus staying a little bit further away from the coastline of Louisiana, Mississippi, some of the central Gulf Coast. So there's still some big question marks exactly in the future of this potential tropical system. Most models this afternoon have agreed that this will indeed at least become a tropical storm. In that case, the name would be Barry. Now, exactly how strong it gets past that, again, it depends upon how fast it forms tomorrow and how quickly it moves inland. Obviously, with the European model, it doesn't really spend that much time over water. It strengthens quicker, so it's still a decent-sized storm, pretty strong, but it moves inland quicker. So the chances of it becoming even more significant would be a whole lot less on the European table than the GFS table. But it's also worth mentioning, though, even if it does stay over water longer, like the GFS model, again, it would be weaker. It would take longer for itself to get its act together. So even though it would stay over water longer, it's still going to take its time to kind of get together. So either way, I don't think we're seeing it a huge major system at this current time. Again, it's a little early on that because the system hasn't even formed yet, but most models I think are agreeing that it won't be too terribly strong, but it will be strong enough to cause problems. Any type of tropical system can always cause problems, and one of those big things is going to be your rainmakers. And if we switch products here, notice all of the moisture located across the southeast U.S. by the time we go into Saturday. If we back up even to Friday afternoon, again, notice all the moisture still located over parts of the southeast United States. Again, all the heavy rainfall is located just offshore in this case, but there's still quite a bit of moisture in this general region that causes a lot of widespread shower and storm activity. So as always with tropical systems, the heavy rainfall threat, the flooding threat always becomes a major issue. So regardless of how strong this becomes with the wind threat, the rainfall and flooding threat will be a huge issue across these areas. Something also to keep in mind is that with that area of high pressure to the west beginning to break down or weaken and move off towards the west sometime Saturday night going into Sunday, this system, depending upon where it is, if it's over water still, it could be moving a whole lot slower in this time frame, which would mean that there would be some significant rainfall amounts across the Louisiana coastline into the Texas coastline going into this weekend. If we look at the European model, it's already inland by about that time as the high pressure weakens, but still it's producing quite a bit of rainfall in this general area. So the slower it moves, the more likely we are to see very high rainfall amounts in this general region as we go into the weekend. So that's just something to keep in mind, that regardless of strength, we're going to be dealing with that flooding threat. Also, you can see there will be a tornado threat with this. As always with tropical systems, there's spin in the atmosphere. You can always get a spin-up tornado or two with these tropical systems. So there's other threats than just the winds. never always focus on the winds. There's always other threats that come along with tropical systems. So we will continue to watch this over the next few days, especially as we go into tomorrow. But again, looking at the satellite imagery right now, it's trying to get its act together. You can see a little bit of that spin, again, mainly in the mid-levels, the surface circulation back in here. So we'll have to continue to monitor it as we go into tomorrow, and especially on Thursday. A reconnaissance aircraft will be going to investigate it tomorrow, and hopefully give us some pretty good data. And we'll have another airplane that goes out tomorrow night that will help sample the upper levels, which in turn helps sample the steering flow that will be influencing this system. So hopefully, as we go into tomorrow, we'll have a little bit more confidence going into the models and giving us a better idea in terms of how strong this will become and where exactly this will go. But either way, we're looking at a pretty hefty rainfall threat as the system begins to slow down as we go Friday and into the weekend. So something to keep in mind. As always, I will try and keep updated as I can over the next few days. In the meantime, keep it tuned to the National Hurricane Center as they issue updates over the next several days, and also your local National Weather Service office.